Hello everyone, and welcome back to Sleepless Campfire. Tonight, we turn our attention to Yellowstone National Park, 3,400 square miles of geothermal wilderness, where the boundary between natural wonder and inexplicable phenomenon grows thin. Across these thermal basins, dense forests, and backcountry trails are accounts drawn from ranger reports, dispatch recordings, and incident files that remain open to this day. Each one documented, verified, and retold exactly as it was recorded. The park receives over 4 million visitors each year. Most leave with photographs and memories, but some encounters are logged differently, filed away in folders marked incomplete or simply unexplained. Now, let us begin with our first story. It was early March of 2023. Ranger Thomas Hadley had been assigned to the Lamar Valley Station for 6 winters. The valley stretched wide and white beneath him, a frozen expanse where buffalo moved like dark shapes through morning fog. He preferred the quiet months when tourist traffic ceased and the park returned to something older, something that predated trails and visitor centers. The radio on his desk crackled with routine check-ins from other stations' weather reports, wildlife sightings, the steady rhythm of another slow day. At 11:15 a.m., dispatch forwarded an unusual request. A solo hiker had activated an emergency beacon near Specimen Ridge, approximately 8 miles northeast of the nearest maintained trail. The coordinates placed him in an area officially closed for winter, accessible only by snowshoe or cross-country ski. Hadley logged the incident as Sierra 19-03 and prepared his pack. The temperature hovered at 14 degrees. Clear sky, no precipitation forecast. He reached the coordinates by 1:40 p.m. The beacon signal pulsed steadily from a GPS unit lying in the snow beside a pair of abandoned snowshoes. No footprints led away. No signs of struggle or wildlife activity. The surrounding snow showed only the compressed trail where someone had stood, then nothing. Hadley keyed his radio and reported the findings. Dispatch acknowledged and requested he expand the search radius. What happened next was recorded on the dispatch log, time-stamped at 1406 hours. Hadley's radio transmission came through clearly at first. He reported moving west along the ridgeline, scanning for any indication of the hiker's direction. Then his voice stopped mid-sentence. 3 seconds of silence followed. When he spoke again, his tone had changed, flatter, more distant. He said he could see someone standing approximately 200 yards downslope, partially obscured by lodgepole pines. Dispatch asked him to describe the individual. Hadley did not respond immediately. The recording captured only the sound of wind across the microphone. When he spoke again, he said the figure was not moving. It stood facing away from him, arms at its sides, wearing what appeared to be a dark jacket. He called out twice. No response. He began descending toward the figure, narrating his approach as protocol required. At 1411 hours, his transmission cut to static. Dispatch attempted contact 17 times over the next 4 minutes. At 1415 hours, Hadley's voice returned. He sounded breathless, as though he had been running. He reported that he had lost visual contact with the figure and was returning to the beacon location. Dispatch asked what had happened. Hadley said only that the figure had turned around. He refused to elaborate. A secondary team reached him by 1630 hours. They found Hadley sitting beside the abandoned beacon, unharmed but visibly shaken. He provided a written statement that evening. In it, he described approaching the figure and watching it turn slowly to face him. Where a face should have been, he saw only darkness, not shadow, but an absence of light that seemed to pull at his vision. He had backed away, keeping his eyes on it, until the tree line blocked his view. The missing hiker was never located. The emergency beacon was registered to a Daniel Cormier of Bozeman, Montana, age 34. His vehicle was found at the Slough Creek trailhead 4 days later. Search operations continued for 2 weeks before being suspended due to severe weather. Hadley requested reassignment in April. His transfer was approved without question. The case file remains active, logged as an unexplained disappearance. It was late September of 2022. Ranger Emily Vasquez had been stationed at Canyon Village for 3 seasons. She knew the area well, the rhythm of the Yellowstone River as it carved through the canyon, the way light shifted through the spray of lower falls, the predictable patterns of elk moving through the meadows at dawn. That evening, she was closing the visitor center alone, a routine task she had performed hundreds of times. The parking lot sat empty under a sky turning deep purple with dusk. At 1842 hours, she locked the main entrance and walked to her patrol vehicle. The motion-activated security camera mounted above the door captured what happened next. The footage was reviewed 3 days later by Park Administration and subsequently forwarded to the National Park Service Investigation Unit. It remains in their archives, labeled as Exhibit 14C in Case File YMP 22-197. Vasquez is seen walking across the frame, keys in hand. She stops approximately 15 feet from her vehicle and turns back toward the building. For 8 seconds, she stands motionless, facing the closed visitor center. Her posture suggests she heard something. She takes 2 steps back toward the entrance, then stops again. Her head tilts slightly, as though listening. Then she runs. The camera captures her sprinting back to the door, fumbling with her keys and disappearing inside. 43 seconds pass. She does not reemerge. At 1851 hours, her silhouette appears briefly in an upper window before the lights inside go dark. Dispatch received her call at 1853 hours. The recording begins with heavy breathing. Vasquez identifies herself and requests immediate backup at Canyon Village. When asked to describe the emergency, she says there is someone outside. Dispatch asks for clarification: civilian, wildlife, medical situation. Vasquez responds that she does not know what it is. She states only that it is standing in the parking lot, approximately 20 yards from the building, and that it is facing the wrong way. Dispatch asks what she means. Vasquez says the figure is standing with its back arched unnaturally, head tilted too far upward, arms hanging loosely. She says it has been standing that way without moving for several minutes. She describes it as wearing ranger uniform, but wrong, the fabric appears too dark, the proportions distorted. When dispatch asks if she recognizes the individual, Vasquez says no, and adds that she does not want to look at it anymore. 2 patrol units arrived at 1914 hours. They found Vasquez inside the locked building, unharmed but unwilling to leave until additional personnel arrived. The parking lot was empty. No footprints, no tire tracks other than those already documented from earlier that day. The security footage was reviewed on site. It showed only Vasquez's return to the building. No other figures appeared in the frame. A second camera positioned at the rear of the building recorded nothing unusual during the same time frame. Rangers swept the surrounding area for 2 hours. They found no evidence of trespassing or disturbance. Vasquez provided a written statement the following morning. She described the figure in detail, the way it stood perfectly still, the unnatural angle of its posture, the sense that it was waiting for her to approach. She stated that when she looked at it, she felt certain it was aware of her, though it never turned around. She transferred to a different park district in November. The incident was classified as a possible stress-related episode, though no official conclusion was recorded. The security footage remains filed and unresolved. It was mid-June of 2021. Ranger Marcus Chen had been assigned to patrol the Norris Geyser Basin boardwalks during the early season opening. The basin sprawled across a shallow valley, a landscape of white mineral deposits and steaming vents where the earth revealed its molten interior. The air smelled of sulfur, and the ground rumbled with geothermal activity that never ceased. Tourists moved along the wooden boardwalks in predictable loops, stopping to photograph Steamboat Geyser and the acidic pools that shimmered in shades of turquoise and rust. At 0730 hours, before the gates opened to visitors, Chen conducted his routine safety inspection of the boardwalk system. He walked the elevated paths slowly, checking for loose boards, testing railings, scanning the thermal features for any changes that might pose danger. The morning was still and cold, the sun just beginning to burn through the mist that rose from the heated ground. He was alone in the basin, the only human presence in a landscape that felt prehistoric and indifferent. At 0748 hours, he noticed something that had not been there the previous evening. A single boot print appeared on the boardwalk approximately 100 yards ahead of him, near the junction where the path split toward Porcelain Basin. The print faced away from the main trail, toward an area of unstable ground marked with warning signs. Chen approached it carefully. The print was clear and fresh, pressed into a thin layer of white mineral dust that had settled overnight. What disturbed him was its location. The boot print sat in the center of a 20-foot section of boardwalk that had been replaced 3 days earlier. The wood was new, unstained, and free of the mineral buildup that covered older sections. For a print to appear there, someone would have needed to walk across the fresh boards after Chen had completed his evening patrol at 2100 hours the night before. He keyed his radio and reported the finding. Dispatch acknowledged and asked if there were additional prints. Chen walked the length of the boardwalk in both directions. He found nothing, no entry point, no exit trail, only the single print facing the restricted thermal area. Then he saw the second anomaly. Approximately 30 feet beyond the boardwalk, in a region of scalding mud pots clearly marked as hazardous, a piece of fabric was visible. It appeared to be caught on a small rock formation surrounded by bubbling thermal features. The area was impossible to reach without crossing ground that would cause severe burns. Chen photographed it from the boardwalk and radioed for a supervisor. A recovery team arrived at 0900 hours. Using thermal-resistant equipment and following strict safety protocols, they retrieved the fabric. It was identified as a torn section of a National Park Service uniform shirt, relatively new, bearing a name tag that read Chen. The Vasin Ranger confirmed it was not his. He had never owned a shirt with his name pre-printed, and all his uniforms were accounted for and secured at the ranger station. A records check revealed no other ranger named Chen currently employed by Yellowstone or any neighboring park. The investigation expanded. Security footage from the Norris entrance gate showed no vehicles or individuals entering the area between Chen's departure the previous evening and his arrival that morning. The boot print was photographed and measured. It matched a standard-issue Ranger boot, size 10. Chen wore size 11. The incident was documented in Report YNP 21-073. No explanation was determined. The torn uniform shirt was filed as evidence and remains in storage at park headquarters. The boot print was left undisturbed and photographed daily for a week before mineral dust obscured it completely. Chen continued his assignment through the summer, but requested a transfer in September. He declined to discuss the incident in detail, noting only that he no longer felt comfortable working alone in the basin. The case remains open and unresolved. It was early November of 2023. Ranger Sarah Ibarra was manning the Tower Junction Station, a small outpost near the park's northern boundary where the road climbed through forested hills dotted with aspen and Douglas fir. The season had turned cold, and visitor traffic had dwindled to a handful of wildlife photographers hoping to catch images of wolves or bears preparing for winter. The station sat quiet most days, its windows overlooking a landscape slowly surrendering to snow. At 1512 hours, the station phone rang. Ibarra answered and identified herself according to protocol. The line carried heavy static, the kind that often accompanied old landlines during storms, though the sky remained clear. A voice came through, male, middle-aged, speaking slowly. He said his name was David Renner and that he needed help. He stated that he was lost somewhere near Tower Fall and could not find the trail back to his vehicle. Ibarra asked for his location. The caller said he did not know exactly, but could hear water running nearby, which he believed was the creek feeding the falls. She asked if he could see any landmarks. He paused before answering. When he spoke again, his voice sounded different, quieter, more uncertain. He said he could see the trail marker, but the arrows were pointing in directions that did not make sense. Ibarra pulled up the area map and began asking standard orientation questions. The conversation continued for 6 minutes. During that time, several details emerged that Ibarra later documented in her report. The caller described standing on a wooden footbridge, which matched the structure near the Tower Fall overlook. However, he insisted the bridge was longer than it should be, and that the railings were on the wrong side. When Ibarra asked him to describe what he could see downstream, he said the creek disappeared into fog, though weather conditions showed clear visibility throughout the area. At 1518 hours, the caller's voice became more agitated. He said someone else was on the bridge with him now. Ibarra asked if he could request assistance from that person. The caller said no, the person was standing at the far end of the bridge, not moving, just standing there facing him. He asked if another ranger had been sent to his location. Ibarra confirmed that no one had been dispatched yet, and she needed his exact coordinates first. The line went silent for 8 seconds. When the caller spoke again, he said the person on the bridge was walking toward him. His voice carried a tone that Ibarra later described as wrong, not scared, but flat, like he was reading something. He said the person was wearing a uniform and that their face looked familiar, though he could not place it. He asked Ibarra if she could tell him the name of the ranger who was approaching him. Ibarra stated clearly that no ranger had been sent to his location. The caller said, "Then who is this?" The line disconnected at 1519 hours. Ibarra immediately radioed dispatch and requested a search team be sent to the Tower Fall area. 2 rangers arrived at 1547 hours and conducted a thorough search of the trail system, overlook, and footbridge. They found no one. No fresh footprints in the light snow that had fallen that morning. No vehicles in the parking area. No camping equipment or signs of recent human activity. A record search for David Renner revealed one result. A hiker by that name had been reported missing in the Tower Fall area in August of 1997. He was last seen on the trail leading to the overlook. His body was never recovered, and the case was closed as a presumed accidental death after extensive search efforts yielded no evidence. The phone number from which the call originated was traced to a disconnected landline that had been removed from service in 2004. The line had been part of an old emergency call box system dismantled when cellular technology improved. Ibarra's incident report was filed as YNP 23-214. The recording of the call was preserved and reviewed by Park Administration. No technical explanation for the call's origin was determined. Ibarra remained at Tower Junction through the winter, but requested reassignment in March. She noted in her exit interview that she no longer answered the station phone if she was alone. The case remains listed as unexplained. It was late August of 2024. Ranger Kyle Brennan was conducting a routine backcountry patrol along the southern shore of Shoshone Lake, one of the park's largest and most remote bodies of water. The lake sat miles from any road, accessible only by foot trail through dense lodgepole forest. It was a place of deep silence, where the water reflected the sky in perfect stillness, and the only sounds were wind and the occasional call of a loon. Brennan had been hiking for 3 hours when he reached campsite number 8, a designated backcountry site positioned on a small peninsula. The site appeared unoccupied, which matched the permit records. No reservations had been issued for that location in over a week. He approached to conduct a standard inspection, checking for bear activity or unauthorized use. The campfire ring stopped him. Someone had built a fire recently. The ashes were still warm, and the arrangement of stones had been altered from its original configuration. More concerning was what sat in the center of the ring. A ranger hat, perfectly placed, brim facing upward, undamaged by flame or heat. The hat was clean, as though it had been set there moments before. Brennan photographed the scene and checked the surrounding area. He found no tent, no backpack, no footprints leading to or from the campsite. The forest floor showed no signs of disturbance. He radioed the finding to dispatch and provided the campsite number. Dispatch asked him to check the hat for identification. He picked it up carefully. Inside the sweatband, a name was written in faded black marker. Brennan. His pulse quickened. It was not his hat, his was secured on his head. He had never lost a hat, never written his name inside one. Yet here it was, identical to his issued gear, bearing his name in handwriting that looked disturbingly similar to his own. He radioed again, his voice steady but strained. Dispatch instructed him to secure the hat as evidence and continue his patrol. He placed it in his pack and moved away from the campsite, following the shoreline trail northeast. At 1733 hours, he saw the tent. It stood approximately 100 yards ahead, positioned off-trail in a clearing visible through the trees. The tent was green, standard backpacking size, with no markings or identifiable features. Brennan called out twice. No response. He approached slowly, following protocol for encountering unauthorized campers. The tent was empty. More precisely, it was set up as though someone had just stepped away, sleeping bag unrolled, backpack leaning against the interior wall, a water bottle sitting upright near the entrance. But everything was wrong. The sleeping bag was folded in a way that made no practical sense. Creased at sharp angles, the backpack sat perfectly upright, impossibly balanced. The water bottle was full and capped, yet condensation covered the outside as though it had been sitting in cold air for hours. Brennan unzipped the tent fully and examined the contents without touching them. Inside the backpack, he found a radio identical to his, a first aid kit, and a laminated park map with a route marked in red ink. The route showed a trail leading from the campsite where he had found the hat directly to this location. He was following a path marked on a map that should not exist, leading to a camp that had no permit, containing gear that mirrored his own. He radioed for immediate backup and exited the area, hiking rapidly back toward the main trail. At 1841 hours, he reached the junction where the Shoshone Lake Trail met the Lewis Channel Trail. He stopped to check his position on his GPS unit. The device showed his location as campsite number 8, the site he had left over an hour earlier. He stood at a marked trail junction with clear signage indicating he was 3 miles from that campsite. The GPS insisted he had not moved. He turned off the unit, waited 30 seconds, and restarted it. The reading remained the same. A recovery team reached him at 2014 hours. They hiked together back to the location where Brennan reported finding the tent. The clearing was empty. No tent, no gear, no disturbance in the undergrowth. They returned to campsite number 8. The fire ring showed no signs of recent use, and no hat was present. Brennan opened his pack. The hat he had collected was gone. His GPS unit, when checked by the team supervisor, showed his movements accurately logged, including his location at the trail junction. The earlier malfunction could not be replicated. The incident was documented in Report YNP 24-146. No physical evidence could be collected. No explanation was provided for the discrepancies in Brennan's account versus the physical findings of the recovery team. Brennan took medical leave in September and did not return to backcountry patrol duties. He accepted a position at park headquarters working in visitor services, where he would not be required to work alone in remote areas. The case was filed as unresolved, with notes indicating possible equipment malfunction and stress-related perceptual errors. The report was marked for review but remains open. It was early December of 2022. Ranger Angela Torres was assigned to night watch duty at the Old Faithful complex during the off-season maintenance period. The famous geyser continued its eruptions through the winter, though without crowds to witness them. The basin lay under 2 feet of snow, and the boardwalks were closed to all but essential personnel. Her shift ran from 2,200 hours to 0600 hours, monitoring the facilities and ensuring no wildlife entered the structures. At 0117 hours, she noticed someone standing near the geyser. From her position inside the visitor center, she had a clear view through the large windows overlooking the cone. The figure stood approximately 40 feet from the geyser's opening, motionless, visible as a dark silhouette against the steam and snow. The geyser was not due to erupt for another 23 minutes, according to its predictable pattern. Torres radioed the main station and reported an unauthorized individual in the basin. She confirmed she would approach and make contact. Dispatch acknowledged and logged the time. She exited through the rear door and walked along the snow-covered boardwalk toward the figure. The temperature hovered near 8 degrees, and her breath formed clouds in the still air. As she drew closer, she could see the figure more clearly. It appeared to be wearing dark clothing, standing with its back to her, facing the geyser. At 0122 hours, Old Faithful began its eruption 11 minutes ahead of schedule. Steam and water rocketed upward, reaching heights exceeding 100 feet. Torres stopped walking, waiting for the figure to move away from the hazardous proximity. The person did not move. Water fell in a wide spray pattern, drenching the area where the figure stood. Still, it remained motionless. The eruption lasted 3 minutes and 14 seconds. When the steam cleared, the figure was gone. Torres swept her flashlight across the basin. Fresh snow showed only her own footprints approaching from the visitor center. No tracks led away from where the figure had stood. She walked to the location, checking carefully. The snow there was undisturbed, compressed only by water from the eruption. She radioed the finding. Dispatch asked if she had made visual contact. Torres confirmed she had observed the individual throughout the eruption, but could provide no description beyond general height and dark clothing. She stated clearly that no one could have walked away without leaving prints in the snow. She returned to the visitor center and logged the incident. For the remainder of her shift, she reviewed security camera footage from the exterior cameras mounted around the complex. The cameras showed only her own exit and return. No other figures appeared in any of the frames. At 0349 hours, she observed someone standing in the same location again. This time, she did not approach. She watched from the window, keeping the figure in sight while radioing for backup. The person stood without moving for 18 minutes. At 0407 hours, a second eruption began again, ahead of its predicted schedule. The figure remained in place as steam and water rose around it. When the eruption ended, the figure was still there. Torres remained inside, watching. At 0433 hours, the figure turned slowly and appeared to look directly at the visitor center. Though the distance and darkness made details impossible to discern, Torres later reported feeling certain it was looking at her specifically, meeting her gaze through the window. Then it simply ceased to be there, not walking away, not obscured by steam, but absent in the space between one moment and the next. Backup arrived at 0511 hours. A full sweep of the basin revealed nothing. Old Faithful erupted again at 0544 hours, returning to its normal pattern. No further anomalies were observed. Torres completed her shift and filed a detailed report logged as YNP 22-361. The incident was reviewed by Park Administration. No official explanation was recorded. Security footage was examined by technical staff, who confirmed no equipment malfunction and no evidence of any individual other than Torres in the basin during her shift. Torres requested a transfer to daytime duties in January. Her request was approved without question. The case remains open and unexplained in park records. It was mid-May of 2025. Ranger Christopher Wade had been conducting wildlife monitoring in the Hayden Valley, a broad expanse of open grassland flanked by the Yellowstone River. The valley served as crucial habitat for bison, elk, and grizzly bears, and required regular patrols to ensure visitor safety during calving season. Wade had worked in Yellowstone for 11 years, and Hayden Valley was his preferred assignment: open, visible, predictable. At 1342 hours, he radioed dispatch with a routine update. He reported clear weather, high visibility, and no significant wildlife activity near the road corridor. He stated his position as mile marker 16, approximately 3 miles south of the Mud Volcano area. Dispatch acknowledged and logged the contact. At 1419 hours, a civilian called Park Dispatch to report seeing a ranger vehicle stopped on the road with the door open and no one inside. The caller provided a location matching Wade's last known position. Dispatch attempted radio contact with Wade 17 times over the next 20 minutes. No response. 2 patrol units were dispatched at 1437 hours. They arrived at 1454 hours. Wade's vehicle was found exactly as the civilian described: engine running, driver's door open, radio handset lying on the seat. His hat sat on the dashboard. The vehicle's dashboard camera was reviewed on site. It showed Wade parking the vehicle at 1358 hours, stepping out with his binoculars, and walking approximately 20 feet to the edge of the road to observe a small herd of bison in the distance. At 1403 hours, Wade turned suddenly toward the tree line to his left. His posture suggests he heard or saw something. He lowers his binoculars and stands still for 11 seconds. Then he walks directly toward the trees, moving at a normal pace, showing no signs of distress or urgency. He disappears into the tree line at 1404 hours. He does not return. Search and rescue operations began immediately. Teams on foot and horseback swept the tree line and surrounding forest. Helicopters with thermal imaging equipment scanned the area through the afternoon and into the evening. K-9 units were deployed. Wade's scent trail was tracked from his vehicle to the tree line, where it stopped abruptly 30 feet into the forest. The dog sat down and refused to continue. Handlers reported the animals showed signs of distress, whining and pulling away from the area where the trail ended. Multiple attempts to re-engage the dogs failed. They would not advance beyond that point. The search expanded to cover a 10-mile radius. No trace of Wade was found, no clothing, no equipment, no signs of struggle or wildlife attack. His radio was never activated after his last contact with dispatch. His cell phone was later found inside his vehicle, left in the center console. On the third day of searching, a team discovered something unusual approximately 2 miles northeast of Wade's last known position. A circle of stones, approximately 8 feet in diameter, arranged with clear intentionality in a small clearing. The stones were river rocks, not native to that elevation, each roughly the size of a human hand. In the center of the circle, pressed into the soft ground, was a single handprint. The print was photographed and measured. It matched Wade's hand size, determined by comparing it to prints on file with Park Human Resources. The print appeared fresh, made within the previous 24 hours. Surrounding the stone circle, the search team found no footprints, no disturbance in the undergrowth, no indication of how the stones had been transported or the print made. The clearing sat in dense forest, over a mile from the nearest maintained trail. The search continued for 2 weeks before being suspended due to lack of any additional evidence. Wade was classified as a missing person. The case was assigned to the National Park Service Investigative Services Branch and remains active. His vehicle was impounded and processed as evidence. The dashboard camera footage was analyzed frame by frame. In the final frames before Wade enters the trees, enhanced video appears to show a darker area within the tree line, a shadow that does not correspond to any natural feature or vegetation pattern. Analysis could not determine if it represented an object, another person, or simply an artifact of light and foliage. Wade's family issued statements requesting privacy and any information from potential witnesses. No credible leads emerged. The park held a service in his honor in June, attended by over 200 staff and family members. The stone circle was left undisturbed for documentation purposes, then dismantled after photographs and measurements were completed. The handprint was preserved through casting before weather eroded it. Ranger Wade's badge number was retired. His name was added to the memorial plaque at park headquarters listing those who served Yellowstone and were lost in the line of duty. The case file remains open, logged as YNP 25-094, awaiting new information that may never arrive. The American wilderness remains vast and unknowable. Across 3,000 square miles of thermal features, alpine forests, and ancient calderas, those who serve as guardians encounter the unexplainable with startling regularity. These are not stories embellished by campfire light or distorted through retelling. They are documented incidents, filed away in archives where their details remain preserved and unresolved. 7 accounts from 7 rangers, each trained to observe, to document, to respond with clarity and professionalism to the realities of wilderness work. What they reported cannot be explained by stress or misperception or equipment failure alone. The pattern emerges not in what is not they saw, but in what they could not reconcile the logic that failed, the evidence that vanished, the certainty that something was present where nothing should be. Yellowstone continues to draw millions who seek beauty and wonder. Most will find exactly that. But the park remembers, and those who work within its boundaries understand that some questions cannot be answered, only recorded and filed alongside others that came before. The land keeps its counsel. The reports remain open. The rangers continue their watch. If you or someone you know has a true story to share, leave it in the comments below. Every account